seem to be just fine, like they were meant to be. Tell me why when you turn your back, things seem to stay the way you left it. All is well, just fine. Tell me why when you open your eyes, fine was just a lie. Things you left turned to mess when you turned your back. Somebody left the gate open. Why all the changes, all of the tears and struggles? Somebody tell me why. All of the sleepless nights, sleep at night. Tell me why all the pain and heartache? Just don't understand why our life was so hard to take. Yeah. Tell me why. Oh, just don't understand how so many things can go wrong. Why?
Hey, oh, these soldiers have got to go. Hey, oh, these soldiers have got to go. Hey, oh, these soldiers have got to go.
Place at the right time for the right brother. Justice for Brother Tony Monteiro.
I didn't expect to speak this morning, but my mama used to say, "Be ye ever so ready." Let me express my troubled feelings regarding Temple's failure to renew Dr. Monteiro's contract. And I come here in support of Dr. Monteiro's struggles, but also the struggle of all people.
That's right.
It is important that our institutions and the leadership of our community understand that diversity is our strength, not our weakness. Not our weakness. You cannot have an African Studies department without having African American scholars who can bring the best flavor to the African American experience. And we cannot, under any circumstances, terminate, regulate, or deny the renewal of a contract of an African American scholar who, to the best of my knowledge, and Dr. Monteiro says that I represent the 181st Legislative District. I represent North Philadelphia.
That's right.
Which encompasses Temple University.
Yes.
And a district where Dr. Monteiro lives and has continued to live throughout his life. I mean, I knew his mama and his family. So I'm not standing here talking about somebody that I have to try to figure out. I know where his commitment has been. I know his skills, his history, and his commitment to the community and the university. And I know that he represents value added.
Yes, yes.
Not value denied. Value added. I have not seen any facts or circumstances which give rise to why his contract should not have been renewed.
I come to each and every one of you this evening in the spirit of a love supreme of John Coltrane. And the love train of Curtis Mayfield when he said, people get ready. And when you love folk, you hate the fact they're being treated unjustly.
That's right.
When you love folk, you loathe the fact they're being treated unfairly. Why? Because there's a connection between love and justice. I love my brother Tony Monteiro.
Yes, yes.
But justice is what love looks like in public.
That's right.
And you have to stand up.
Yes.
Sly Stone said, stand. There's a midget standing tall and the giant beside him about to fall. And we here to straighten our backs up and take a stand for justice, and it does include our dear brother Tony Monteiro. But what we love about him is that justice for him is inseparable for justice for poor people and working people in every corner of the globe.
I was upset as many of us all were. I want to make it very clear. W.E.B. Du Bois is considered by anybody who knows not just the greatest black intellectual this nation's produced, but the greatest intellectual this nation has produced. There is no scholar in this country who has been more dedicated and devoted to Du Bois as an intellectual than has Dr. Tony Monteiro. This attack on him is therefore an attack on our intellectual tradition. We have some lessons, I think, that we need to learn here. For a while, our community has struggled to have what we call NHICs. Black faces in high places. And we've achieved that. Nowhere in this nation do we exist at 50% or more of the population where we don't ourselves have supposed rulership of our cities. Yet our community's conditions have not increased. We have not benefited as a community. Philadelphia has a particular message and lesson here because it was us back in the 80s when we fought to get the first mayor elected, and we achieved that only for that mayor to co-sign the bombing of an entire black community in the MOVE organization. You see, what they do is when we achieve our struggle, or an aspect of our struggle, when we get just up the hill, they attack our most radical aspect of our community. That's what they did with the MOVE bombing. When Obama was running for office, what was the sacrifice Obama had to make but to throw his own pastor underneath the bus in order to achieve the White House? That pastor wasn't just some handkerchief head Negro either, but a minister of black liberation theology. So what we have here now at Temple is the same thing. It was Dr. Monteiro and students from the community and the university that fought to have Dr. Asante reinstated as chairperson of the department. And the first act the university did as payback was to attack our dear brother. Our struggle is not for diversity but justice. Our struggle is not for black first, but for black liberation. We have to connect what's happening on the campus to what is happening in the community. No matter who is at the head of these academic departments, those departments are beholden to the people. Because were it not for the people, there would not be a black studies in this nation. So that is our stance. I'm going to end with a poem. This is called Reckoning. They would have us submit as if we are their children. Though we be the world's majority, they would have us submit, have us smile, all the while riling under the whip and crime. They would have us shuffle and dance, crooked and bent, corrupted by our proximity to them. They would have us pray, kneeling at the altar of their evil when they send our children to an early grave. They would have us forgive, make nice whenever they come out they face with their vileness and vice. They would have us fight each other when they are the root of the evil. They would have us submit and be satisfied with their bullshit. Let them have their way with us. But there are some of us. There are some of us who refuse to be ruled by enslavers and colonists. With every hit, our skin grows thick.
Yes.
Our memory runs long, longer than your history. We come from tough stuff. The progeny of kings and conquerors, matriarchs and magistrates, healers and killers, soldiers and generals. We be rebels and rioters, strikers and fighters, educators and architects, risk takers, law breakers, movement makers. We be revolutionary as they come, with God's everlasting drum beating hard in our hearts. There is nowhere for you to hide. We be in maroon state now, lying in wait. And though we suffer you now, our patience runs thin. See, we means to be free.
Yes.
As far as our eyes can see. And as our ancestors said, every shut-eye ain't sleep. So peep this as warning and promise. With all your attacks, even your God won't be able to help the day we decide to strike back.
That's right.
I'm sure I don't need to introduce Dr. Anthony Monteiro to you. I'm positive I don't need to introduce him to you. I will only say that he is a man of passion. He told me not to say much about him, so I don't need to, because you know him. I just want to thank him for being present. Thank him for working with me and helping me to help the Advocate become what it is that God has created it to be. Dr. Monteiro.
Thank you very much, Renee, and I want to thank all of you all for coming out here. You know, it's really a great honor. I'll speak up, Jackie. It's a great honor to be able to be in this really historic space. If you read the article in the Daily News yesterday, which was a great article, by the way, and a great photo of Reverend Mackenzie, but it talked about the historic relationship of this sanctuary to the struggle for black freedom. And many of you here know about that history, but we're in a new era now, and Reverend Mackenzie is taking it forward, and I'm really pleased and honored to be a part of this. And of course, this is one of the most beautiful spaces in all of Philadelphia, which brings together what would seem to be non-complementary art forms, the Gothic and the modern African-American protest art. And while we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of King's letter from a Birmingham jail. It's also the 40th anniversary of these murals that are all around us here. So it's a real honor to be here. To start with, I, and I'm certain you, are compelled to acknowledge our gratefulness to Martin Luther King and all of our freedom fighters and martyrs, not least of them Denise McNair, Cal Robertson, Cynthia Wesley, and Addie Mae Collins, the 4 girls killed in the 16th Street Baptist Church on September 16, 1963, in Birmingham, Alabama. Medgar Evers was killed on June 16, 1963. James Earl Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner would be murdered in June of 1964 in Philadelphia, Mississippi. We express our gratefulness to Rosa Parks, Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, Imam Jamil Abdullah Alamin, Rap Brown, Willie Ricks, Dorothy Cotton, Gloria Richardson, Coretta Scott King, and all of those who sacrificed so that we might stand in this place at this time in history. We reach out to and welcome to this assembly of the people all of those caught in the stranglehold of a failing economy and structural white supremacy. Therefore, on my behalf and on behalf of my sister and comrade in arms, Reverend Dr. Renee McKenzie, I wish to welcome you and to thank you for coming out and committing yourself to what we hope to achieve this weekend. To all of the poor people, the homeless, the semi-homeless, and those about to become homeless, to all of those without health insurance, to the unemployed and those without welfare or unemployment benefits, thank you for allowing us to speak on your behalf and for coming out here today. To those working 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet, welcome. To those infected with HIV and AIDS, to those battling cancer and other diseases, we want to express our solidarity with you and your struggles for health and your lives. To the children and youth, to students, we reach our hands and hearts to you and let us ascend the stage of history together in order that through struggle we can guarantee our common future. To the neighbors of this church who live in the shadows of the relative privilege of a great and expanding university, we welcome you as our neighbors and friends. In this regard, we believe the university cannot see itself as a fortress against the community, but its friend and ally. To those who stand bewildered as the social and racial contradictions that support white privilege evaporate under the weight of the economic and social crisis of the nation, we welcome you here and we welcome you to the truth. We start this gathering of the people in the spirit that compelled James Baldwin to return to the U.S. after a long exile in Europe in order to be a witness not just to the suffering of his people, but of their struggle for justice and equality. The spirit of witness, existential engagement, and the search for a way out of the nation's and the world's crisis motivates us, as it did Baldwin. We stand upon the Judeo-Christian prophetic tradition. We seek the truth because we believe the truth can make us free. Like Martin Luther King Jr., we acknowledge the fierce urgency of now. Like him, we insist that time waits for no one and that procrastination is still the thief of time. In this time of suffering and confusion, we agree with James Russell Lowell, truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne, but it is the scaffold that sways the future. The 19th century anti-slavery preacher, Theodore Parker expresses our 21st century sentiment: the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends to justice. And like the black anti-slavery freedom fighter Henry Highland Garnett, we proclaim, let your motto be resist, resist, resist. And rest assured that in this space, there are no big me's and little you's. Degrees and professional credentials can be left at the door. This conference is an assembly of, by, and for the people.
Ain't no power like the power of the people, 'cause the power of the people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people, 'cause the power of the people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people, 'cause the power of the people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people, 'cause the power of the people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people, 'cause the power of the people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people, 'cause the power of the people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people, 'cause the power of the people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people, 'cause the power of the people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people, 'cause the power of the people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people, 'cause the power of the people don't stop.
These buildings sit on the former homes of black people who had to leave out of here so Chipper could build these buildings. So you have a responsibility. There's a lot of people that's outside of this building or this campus will never get into a university. They'll never even come up on these grounds. So you stand up for them. You speak for them. Whoever it is, don't let this super heifer, don't let her win. She has to go.
So I took the race genetics class like all students are required to do, and I found it really interesting and enlightening. And so I went to the College of Liberal Arts and I declared my minor. I've been taking classes, and African American Studies has been really broadened my perspective on culture, on people, and on history. I've become more multifaceted, and I've looked at the world completely differently, and I have to thank African American Studies for that. People, when I tell people I'm African American Studies, they kind of laugh because it's like, what are you doing? Like, you're a white dude. Why are you taking these classes? Like, why are you doing this? But I think it's really interesting learning about another culture. I didn't even realize how Eurocentric our educational system was until I started taking these classes. And it's been really interesting because even like little things, like this neighborhood being called Templetown. It's not Templetown. This is the Cecil B. Moore community. And Templetown has just come into the neighborhood. Things like that, things I never thought about before. And I just want to thank African American Studies and the College of Liberal Arts. And we should keep this program going because it's been amazing for all walks of life. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Our last speaker today, I don't know if any of you know about the MOVE organization, but if you haven't heard of the MOVE organization, I want you to go home and Google that today. In 1985, the mayor of Philadelphia, a black man, Wilson Good, ordered a bomb to be dropped on a city block on Osage Avenue, right in West Philadelphia, where I'm from. Today we have the speaker, Sister Pam Africa, here of the MOVE organization.
Thank you. I'm a grandmother. I'm a 66-year-old great-grandmother, grandmother, mother, and wife. And most of all, I'm a revolutionary. I don't back the fuck down, don't take no talk. And one thing I want to say, when the Pan-African Studies Department got started, it started by great men and women who took a stand and understood we must teach our children about who they are. We're not only our children, because the classes is for, the elders is for everybody. When that happened, it happened with students. Many days I stood at this bell tower fighting for the injustices of what was happening in our community along with students and what was happening here, because this was our community. country as well. And I'll be damned if I'm going to stand by and allow some white racist heifer, is that right, Sisters Always? White racist heifer and her followers, because she don't stand by herself. She got backup. And I want her to understand that when all this started, we never stood alone. We always had to fight of people united together to do what it is that we had to do, led by some determined black folks to do what was right. So what I'm saying to everybody that's standing out here, if you want to see this white racist heifer live here the way she, because I'm saying it's a shame. It is really a shame that this woman can actually think that she can put a white woman as the head of African studies. How arrogant can this heifer be? How disjointed from reality can this woman be?
But we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Birmingham movement and Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail. Birmingham was the most racist, the most segregated, the most violent city of the nation in 1963. The Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights, founded and led by the heroic Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, called upon the SCLC to come to Birmingham. He had been demanding this for many years, but it was not until the civil rights movement and SCLC had reached a watershed in 1962, after more than a year of a civil rights campaign in Albany, Georgia. The movement seemed to have lost its fire. In Albany, Martin Luther King was arrested several times, but each time that he was arrested, the Commissioner of Police, Pritchett, bailed him out so as not to allow Albany to become a center of international and national concern over the fate of Martin Luther King and the direction of the civil rights movement. So by 1962, there was no guarantee about the direction and future of the civil rights movement. Indeed, there were still freedom rides, there were still local campaigns, but there was no national focus. At its September 1962 national conference, SCL, which is the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, under pressure from Reverend Shuttlesworth, decided upon Birmingham. And in January 1963, they began their strategic and tactical planning. These Southern preachers knew Alabama. They knew Birmingham. And they knew this would be a decisive battle, and it was. They also knew that in going into Birmingham, that they took their lives into their hands. The white leadership of the state of Alabama and the city of Birmingham, George Wallace, Bull Connors, and others, had made it clear that if you come in here, be prepared to go to jail and to die. The black community was split. There was an election in the spring of 1963, an election between a hardcore segregationist, Bull Connor, and a so-called reform segregationist, Albert Bootwell. As things would have it, the moderate segregationist won. Moderate, but yet a segregationist. Black leaders felt that the new mayor could be negotiated with, and feared that making Birmingham the center of the national civil rights movement would only inspire violence and disrupt the possibility of a negotiated desegregation of downtown Birmingham. King and SCLC were not popular in all corners of Birmingham. But in April, after the election, SCLC began the mass protest campaign. A court order had been sought and gotten outlawing demonstrations, to which Martin Luther King said, "We have a right to protest for right," and that if it takes going to jail, the threats of death, and even death itself, we are moving forward. On April 10th, 1963, Martin Luther King, Fred Shuttlesworth, and Ralph David Abernathy led a march of some 300 people. King, Shuttlesworth, and Abernathy were roughly arrested and in prison. King had been to prison many times, but this time he was put in solitary confinement.
When did they start? Or the march in the 60s? In the 50s? Wow. I wasn't even born in 55. Really? Wow.
All right, let's try this one.
Salt everything.
I just want to thank everyone for coming out, again supporting, and also those who took off for work. We have to recognize the working poor who came out today, who may not even get paid today, but they came out to support. We always have to recognize the working poor and the ones who wanted to be here but could not be here because they couldn't afford to take the day off, but they're here in spirit, and we want to thank those people as well. We are gathered here today on Wednesday, April 16, 2014, on the grounds of the historic Richard Allen Homes, formerly known as the Richard Allen Projects, to demand the reinstatement of Dr. Anthony Monteiro with tenure. We are also demanding the firing of Dean Teresa Soufis.
That's right.
On behalf of the black community, we are holding city officials and Temple University accountable for their continued suppression of black North Central Philadelphia. What Dr. Monteiro is doing in the academy, his freedom schools that are held every Saturday at the historic Church of the Advocate, his continuous activism for political prisoners, his anti-death penalty work, and his continuous work and outreach to the poor and working poor is aligned with the great Richard Allen. Not to mention his relentless work on the life and works of the great W.E.B. Du Bois.
Dr. Fernandez and I found it easy in many ways to get the headline signers that you find on this call. Angela Davis, Cornel West, Mark Lamont Hill, white scholars of white racism like Joe Fagan and David Rediger. Why was it easy? Because you're on the front line, we're on the front line here of something that's going on all across this country, which is why this walk is so important, why I wish I didn't have to go back to work at 2 o'clock and could stay with you for the whole of it. Yes, it's not only about a dismissal and a rejection and a repression of Dr. Anthony Monteiro, which it is. It's also about dismissal of Africana studies and of African American studies in universities all across this country. That's clear from the many 200 signers and growing that email us about what they're facing at other institutions. And then it's also about the dismissal of critical ethnic studies in universities across the country. Our Latino and Latina brothers and sisters, Asian American studies, Arab American studies, women's sexuality and gender studies. There's some signers here. They know that their strong political traditions of radical criticism are at stake. And of course, at these other universities, it's about a dismissal, not just of faculty and of disciplines, but a dismissal of neighborhoods. It's a dismissal of the poor. of the communities that are right around these growing universities. I like the phrase Dr. Monteiro uses all the time in his talks. You've heard him about the neoliberal, corporatized universities that put out their tentacles into the communities around them. I did my doctoral studies at the University of Chicago, and I saw it there as that corporation did its work against the community. And now to defend it, it has to have a police force that's the third largest police force in the entire state of Illinois, just for that university.
It really is an honor and a pleasure to be here this afternoon, because ultimately we're here to answer the question, what is the purpose of a university? And that's an important question, because we're living in a world in crisis. We see wars abroad, and we look around our city here in Philadelphia, and we see an apartheid system, right? We're looking across the street at a white police force. There are no, in a black neighborhood, there are no pretensions about what is going on here. We are living in a city in which unemployment is at an all-time high in the aftermath of the economic crisis of 2008. We are living in a city in which parts of it look like they're bombed out. They look like a war zone. I got a sense of that when I came to Philadelphia to make the film Justice on Trial, and we went to neighborhoods in this city that looked like the third world. And so the question of the university amidst a crisis, both locally and internationally, an economic crisis, a crisis of persistent racism and oppression, of scapegoating innocent people like prisoners and immigrants, and people who look different from the norm. These questions are critical. And Dr. Tony Monteiro is part of the tradition within the university that seeks to explore the root causes of social problems. But he's also integrally involved in movements on the ground, in the community. About a month or two ago, we had an incredible press conference at 1199. And that press conference was important because labor came out, the churches came out, the community came out, students came out, and you really got a sense that here is a man, a native son of Philadelphia, who's a scholar, who grew up in the poorest streets of the city, got a PhD, but he decided that he was going to dedicate his life to solving and addressing social problems, not from the ivory tower, but he was going to, in fact, continue to work on the ground with communities fighting for equality and freedom.
like to begin by reading a statement to you. We're gathered here because justice demands it. We, black labor, the black faith-based community, scholars, academics, students and youth, the grassroots community, and philanthropic organizations are here to speak truth to power and to make it clear that we will not be turned around. We insist that without justice there cannot be peace. We in one sense are here because I have been fired, and to call upon the president of Temple University to reverse Dean Sufis's revenge and retaliatory action against me and my colleague, Dr. Maxwell Stanford. This firing was preceded by a series of actions that, if directed towards any group other than black people generally and black men in particular, would have been cause for Dean Sufis's removal. Her statement that she did not see a black community, pointing her finger in Molefe Asante's face in a manner reminiscent of Jim Crow racism and slavery, sending an email to our past departmental chair stating that myself, Drs. Stanford and Wonkior, should not even think we were competitive to apply for a tenure-track position. The harassment, bullying, and driving from the university, Drs. Lewis Gordon and his wife Jane Gordon, her turning down the vote of our faculty to appoint Dr. Kariamu Welsh, a full professor, recognized dance scholar and twice chair of the dance department, as interim chair of our department. Her push to make a white woman scholar chair over the objections of the majority of our faculty and students. Her belligerent attitude and hostile body language when meeting with our faculty. Her denying me the right to advise grad students and their dissertations in violation of accepted practice, which is so common that the procedure is institutionalized. This culminated in her letter of January 6, 2014, telling me my contract would not be renewed after the current semester. She gave no reason and only said I should contact the chair of my department for further explanation. In fact, the only explanation I've received thus far appeared in the Philadelphia Tribune, where she said my firing had to do with, quote, a change of direction, end quote, in the department. After more than 10 years of teaching, mentoring, service to the university and the department, I was told via the news media that my services were no longer needed because of a change of direction and, quote, an exciting new curriculum, end quote. She mentioned nothing of my scholarship, teaching, and community service or mentoring. The question is, why not? The answer is that this is nothing less than a retaliatory and revenge firing. It is her getting back at me for my standing up to her bullying, pointing fingers at black men, her authoritarian attempt to take over African American studies, and my taking the struggles for the life and integrity of our department to the black community, those to whom we are ultimately accountable. I'm a scholar and an activist. My life and work is guided by the moral imperative to stand for justice, to work to end poverty, homelessness, and hunger, to fight to end mass incarceration and for justice and freedom for political prisoners and prisoners of conscience, to end war and to save the earth and humanity from a climatic catastrophe. My scholarship, as is well known, is anchored in the intellectual and moral courage of W.E.B. Du Bois.
Yes, yes.
The unflinching opposition to war, racism, and poverty of Martin Luther King Jr. The wisdom of Ella Baker and the witness of James Baldwin.
Yes. Yes.
I teach them and write about them and try to live like them.
Yes.
Come on now. Come on now.
As an example to my students and my community. And need I say I come from, am organically tied to, and ultimately accountable to the great Afro-American people and their mighty strivings for freedom. This moral and intellectual positioning is viewed by some in the academy as outside the bounds of legitimate academic work. It is seen as threatening and certainly a challenge to the idea that higher education exists to make profit rather than uphold and teach human values. I ask, is not the social historical grounding of African American studies the Afro-American people? Is not the basis of our phenomenology the humanity of the Afro-American people? Do these not then compel us to unconditional solidarity with our people? If we reject the centrality of the Afro-American people to what we do and what we teach and who we are, shouldn't we just fold up our tents, go home and call ourselves something other than African American studies? We are now at a moment of truth. It is an existential moment. It is what Martin Luther King spoke of in his famous sermon, 3 Dimensions of a Complete Life. We can choose to either stand for justice or be indifferent to it. We can choose at our collective peril, I might say, selfishness and egotism over service and the undeniable recognition that an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. What affects me today will certainly be your fate tomorrow. And if you are a black person, what makes you think your loyalty to injustice now will protect you from the same evil tomorrow? We are compelled to break the betrayal of our silences. I have been unjustly fired. I have been publicly spoken of as a non-entity whose teaching, scholarship, and service have meant little, practically nothing to the university and the department. There are scores of people who can replace me, I'm told. After all, you don't have tenure. But is that all there is to it? And some will ask, Dr. Monteiro, why are you choosing the path of resistance and protest rather than accepting your fate and going quietly into the night?
No, sir.
Isn't that what others in your position do? Temple University and its dean are too powerful. They don't retreat on things like this. This dean is too invested in getting you out of Temple. How do we, the people, fight such a powerful institution as Temple? Can't they buy off those who would be your allies? My only answer is there's more to this than Temple and me. The question is what is right, what is moral, and how can we serve the cause of justice? In the process, how do we transform a powerful institution into a great one? Moreover, to make Temple a great university, we must resituate it as a force for good and service to the people, especially the poor, and especially its neighbors. And we must defend the rights and dignities of all employees of Temple. I agree with Martin Luther King. We can all be great because we can all serve. By standing up, I believe I am serving my community, my people, the great Afro-American people, Temple University, and all who stand for justice. It is far larger than me. It's also about the children in Nara's homes right next to Temple. It's about the human beings that inhabit the 2 poorest zip codes in Philadelphia, which are neighbors to Temple. It's about them. It's about the kids harassed by the police and told, keep it moving, you don't belong here. It's about the closing down of Saturday free schools and W.E.B. Du Bois lectures and symposia that open the classroom and lecture halls to the poor and working class. In this whole thing, I am but a part, an instrument, if you will. Yet it is this mix, as my friend Sakari Rhodes reminds me, my ancestral obligation to stand at this time in this place. I did nothing wrong. I have served the university and its neighbors. Ask my students. Yes. Ask people in the neighborhood near and far from Temple. I served and lived up to my contractual agreements. Now we must fight. That's right. Now is the time. That's right. Our demands are simple. 1, reinstate me with tenure. Yeah. 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 Came there with tenure. 2, end the harassment, retaliation, and bullying of others and myself. Allow me to perform my duties as a scholar and activist. 3, restore my right to reserve rooms in lecture halls for lectures, conferences, symposia, the Saturday free school, and film showings. That's right. And 4, an apology from Dean Sufis and others. For defamation of my character and the belittling of my intellectual and professional achievements. Thank you very much.
Temples attack, we're gonna beat back. Temples attack, we're gonna beat back. Temples attack, we're gonna beat back. Temples attack.
Lectures on W.E.B. Du Bois at over there at Temple, and I met him also through the work he does with the Brothers Network. And other than sitting in his class and a few other classes, I have never attended college, so I don't really have an inroad into that reality and that sentiment and those passions where they lie. But I do know where my passions and my sentiments lie for a real dude in this world, talking about the real things and dissecting the informations and the realities that are around us and putting them into a context where the people who are being spoken over their heads can understand it and embrace it and see what's going on around them. And this is one of those dudes. And I love this dude for that. He speaks real shit, as they would say, where I'm from. Yo, that's real shit, yo. That's real shit. You know what I mean? And I mean, I could have gone to college, a gang of them. I always felt like it was some fake shit. I always felt like it was in the interest of upholding the ivory tower, all this stuff, and the slave masters who profited from chattel slavery and the results of that over the years, and just being able to lick their boots and say, hey, look at me. So, but in meeting this brother and being able to experience him, I seen that there are those minds out there that aren't all about that. They are about something more transcendental, more soulful, something realer. And I'm glad to be here. I'm not going to be reenacting so much as reading, but he gave me the opportunity to read from W.E.B. or Malcolm, and I love those fiery personages, those people that were about getting people amped up and challenging things. And so this is a little piece from something Malcolm did, called that the Autobahn. Yeah. When you go back over the period of struggle, I think it will be agreed that we've gone through different patterns of struggle, that we've struggled in different ways. Each way that we've tried never produced what we were looking for. If we had been productive, we could have continued along that same way. We've tried probably more different methods than any people. But at the same time, I think we've tried more wrong methods than any other people. Because most others have gotten more freedom than we have. Everywhere you look, people get their freedom faster than we do. They get more respect and recognition faster than we do. We get promises, but we never really get the real thing. And primarily because we have yet to learn the proper tactic or strategy or method to bring freedom into existence. I think that one of the things that has caused our people in this country to try so many methods is that times have changed so rapidly. What would be proper 10 years ago would not have been proper 7 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 3 years ago. Times change so quickly. If you and I don't keep up with the times, we'll find ourselves with an umbrella over our head and the sun is out. Or we'll find ourselves standing in the rain with the umbrella inside the door. If we don't keep up with what's going on, we will not be able to display the type of intelligence that will show the world we know what time it is.
Attack, beat back. Temples attack, we gotta beat back. Temples attack, we gotta beat back. Temples attack, beat back. Temples attack.
Greetings from my International Longshoremen's Association, the rank and file, and solidarity with this movement.
Yes.
To get Tony Monteiro back to the job, back to the point of production.
That's right. Yes.
And that's what I like to talk about from the people before me at the 11th and Poplar at State. That was Joanna, Sister Joanna, and it was the professor that had to go back up to the campus when they really focused on labor, particularly I like to say black labor. There has been a tradition, and like when we talk about the waterfront, it's a big tradition in this town. And I have to say that going back with Dr. Monteiro, with his family, taking his father for one, John Monteiro, who is a retired longshoreman from our local. Tony also a longshore worker. This is the other side people don't know about Tony, that he worked on the Philadelphia waterfront before he began to indulge in other areas of work. We used to call it back in the day when you worked hard and you studied and you were out here fighting the good fight, that you were considered to be a revolutionary black intellectual, or intelligence. That's the intelligence of the working class.
Fight the power. That's right.
Fighting the power.
That's right. That's us.
And so, like, with that tradition, and I like to add to it just this moment being here, with that tradition that Tony comes from, a labor background, ILA, when I think about it, the high school that I went to right there was called it's still called Ben Franklin. And I remember when I left from there in January, we had to have semesters. Malcolm X was assassinated. And we had been making the move before his assassination to name that high school Malcolm X. Tony goes back, Sophus goes out.
Yes, yes,
you know what I'm saying?
yes.
That's the way labor got to play the game, because we're going to shut something down around here.
Yes, yes, yes.
And like, I want to send a message back to the West Coast that we ready.
Yes.
See what I'm saying? It ain't no problem. Back in the 73, let me just say another thing. Tony was part of it. He was the executive director of the National Alliance, well,
anti-imperialist.
National Anti-Imperialist Movement in solidarity with African liberation. Tony worked with, as the executive director, he worked with Oliver Tambo, head of the African National Congress, at the United Nations at that time, while Nelson Mandela was in jail.
Yes, yes.
With all that experience, even though things happened, he was the first to initiate with NAMSO the campaign to get 1 million signatures to oppose the apartheid in South Africa. That was the program. But later on, he had to come down the waterfront. That's just it. We did stuff on the waterfront. We were shutting down ships from South Africa. We didn't work. All this experience building up to where we are at today, you can say that he doesn't have the experience or the qualifications to teach at Temple University. Somebody else got to go. Maybe a whole group of people up there got to go in that administration. This is what we got to fight for.
I just want to say that when I saw the name of one of the cardboards says we hired Dr. Monteiro, I said there's got to be only one Monteiro. So Tony and I have known each other for a very long time. He's a great man, great leader in our community, and a tremendous professor. Keep up the good fight, Tony.
Thank you, Bob.
God bless.
What to eat, how to grow their foods. That's important. And not only that, he does a lot of other work. So I want to introduce Tommy, Brother Tommy.
Peace, 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 peace. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so happy to be here, giving thanks and praise to God. First and foremost, give it up for yourself. Give it up for yourself. Turn it up, though. Turn it up. Come on, y'all. Come on, turn it up, turn it up, turn it up, turn it up. This is such a wonderful movement that we all are part of right here. And I want to say just a few words. I want to lend my voice to this movement and also lend my body to this movement, because this movement is going to be a protracted movement. I want to talk about, and I want to say some words about Brother Monteiro, about the importance of this movement against Temple University. I want to talk to you a little about what it means to us, the importance of what you are doing. I know you are aware of the fact that this battle right here is a frontline battle. Every soldier right now that's on the field right now for this battle is needed and necessary. And I hope that you win it for the long haul. I hope that you are ready for victory in this particular struggle. Now we all know for a fact that we're not going to let Temple University, we're not going to let Temple University, a university that's inside of our community, destroy our community. Right? We're going to let them do that? No. Are we going to let a board of directors at Temple University, a small clique, a small circle, a small gang in fact? Now why do I call them a small gang? Because a gang does things like outlaws. They come in and they bully people around. They bully people by taking people's properties, taking their homes, Temple University. They bully people by keeping members of the working class, members of the community, out of Temple University. They bully the community by taking our professors that's actually teaching. Have y'all ever heard of that? Professors that's actually teaching? I'm not talking about professors that don't even want to get up in the morning and go to work. I'm not talking about professors that teach lies. I'm not talking. I ain't gonna tell y'all how old I am now. She said 20 years, so y'all can do the math to that. When I was 15, 16 years old, it was this gentleman right here and his comrades who took me and my young comrades and Comrade Salah, our brother Comrade Salah. You remember that? He took us, introduced us, and sharpened us in the history of the people's struggle in this country. We was high school students, and he introduced us. This was in the house. This was in Red Terminal Market. This was on 26th Street. This was over there at the Road Rules office. Brother Monteiro is a treasure for our community. He is part and parcel of the tradition of the revolutionary fighters who use their pen and also use their heart and their mouth. So in conclusion, I wanted to go back and I wanted to say to Temple University that you can't mess with my big homie. I'm in North Philly, we all in North Philly, we all in North Philly, we in West Philly, we in South Philly.
North Philly!
Right. You can't retaliate against a professor who refused to allow you to destroy and run roughshod over the neighborhood.
That's right.
You can't do that because we see you. So I want to let you know to think very carefully about when a decision comes upon your table of what you want to do about Brother Monteiro. And we cannot forget Dr. Mohammed Ahmed.
We need him to stay here to keep our disciplines authentic and to keep our communities thriving and to keep us as having a say in the things that go on inside these institutions. When these foreigners and these outsiders come inside of our neighborhoods, we need to know what to do. Let's stop being comfortable. To be silent means that you are okay with the gentrification going on in North Philadelphia. To be silent and to not fight with us and walk with us today means you are okay with what Temple University is doing to this area. So let's all today, let me feel the vibes out here today. We all feeling all happy, jolly. We got these loud voices. Let's not let ourselves be silent. Let's stay loud today. Monteiro in!
Sufis out!
Monteiro in!
Sufis out!
Monteiro in!
Sufis out!
Right. Montero in!
Sufis out!
Montero in!
Sufis out!
Montero in!
Sufis out!
Montero!
I want to introduce two brothers that came all the way from New York on behalf of Dr. Monteiro, supporting Dr. Monteiro. And they will give some spoken word about gentrification, what Temple is doing and trying to do to Norris Apartments.
Thank you.
Yeah!
Power to the people!
Yeah!
My name is Angel Martinez, and this is Carlos Raul Duflar. We're from the Brothers Rising Poetry Collective, and we're here today not just in support of Tony Monteiro, not just as a colleague, as a comrade, but also an old friend. We're coming out to support the brother over here. And in that spirit, we have to talk about Tony Monteiro as the internationalist. We need that word because gentrification is happening all around the world, all around the industrialized world, pushing poor people out. And so in that spirit, and before I do, I want to give a big hand to all of you. Let's give yourselves a big hand for being here tonight. And a big hand to Tony for keeping on the struggle. This is called When the Slum Overlord Comes to Town. When the slum overlord comes to town, making golden miles in North Philadelphia, East Harlem, North Brooklyn, there's a word you are not allowed to say. We hear of glass towers and non-developments, millionaires' second homes and old factories. You will not hear the word gentrification. A rich face in the so-called ethnic enclave, but, oh, you say there's no color here? This is only news fit to lie about. The global north is the empire, the stolen wealth. Till indigenous, Spanish-speaking oppressed, black and Asiatic began to rise, they drove us away from our homelands. Now we drive them crazy because we dare to demand jobs to afford the landlord's greed. They're happy for us, underpaid, overworked, overlorded. In our apartments, in our tenants, our streets, no heat, no light, no life, no talk of working class allowed. They want to kill us again and again. They fear our unity. It is only in a united front against the millionaires, the slumlords, the slacking pilgrims, we must sweep away into the drains of what must be gone and build our movement to gain back all the riches they have taken away.
It's more than just the community and the student thing. It's so much more than what we're trying to do with not just Rain State of Monteiro, but trying to bring a closer relationship between the university and the community, because you can't just plop this university here and expect to keep everyone out when it was created for such bigger reason than that. What the Student Coalition have been doing is we've been doing a lot of flyering and postering. Today we're actually planning on going into Sullivan Hall and to try to get another meeting with the provost, because no matter how many times we email him, no matter how many petitions we sign and bring to him, they refuse to come out and talk to us, to come out and address this issue that's affecting the entire university, the entire student body. And they just keep ducking us. No matter how many times we email, no matter how many channels we go through, the channels that they put into this university, the channels that are supposed to work for us to get a meeting with them, the rules they put for our students to be able to communicate, they're the ones that are breaking their own rules, not talking to us, because they know that we're standing on the moral and ethical high ground right now. Exactly, they're cowards for not trying to talk to us, for completely disregarding our process, our democracy. We did not vote to get rid of Anthony Monteiro. It was not a democratic decision by the student body, by the colleagues of Anthony Monteiro. It was a single person who decided to get rid of one of the most, if not the most, respectable FM professors, just scholars of present modern day society. And just to go over our heads to get rid of this admirable person is just, it's despicable. And just to see how much support he has and to not grant us a meeting, just one meeting with the provost, with the dean, with the president, with anybody, just to listen to us, to listen to our concerns, is just absolutely just downright despicable. And they're just cowards, and I'm getting angry just talking about this right now. I really just, I need a minute.
we cannot begin to understand the world in which we live if we do not have within our vocabulary and our conceptual lexicons the concept crisis. Our nation remains in crisis. The crisis has not abated, it's gotten worse. To me, to explain the processes which Glenn and George have laid out, they begin with the crisis of American capitalism. And therefore, I do agree with George that increasingly none of the problems that we face, poverty, mass incarceration, unemployment, lack of health care, the closing down of schools, the murdering of young men and women in the streets of our nation by the state. None of these problems will be resolved separate and apart from the end of the system that have brought all of these problems into being. It's just not going to happen. 15 years ago, I would not have made this argument. I felt that there remained democratic possibilities, liberalizing and reform possibilities within the framework of American capitalism. Since the financial crisis of 2006, 2007, through 2009, and the economic depression known as the Great Recession that followed, there has been a tightening of the grips of the repressive mechanisms of the state, and a open undermining of the rights of the people, civil liberties, civil rights, and so on. But as repression has intensified domestically, the militarist drive of American imperialism and American empire has also deepened and widened. And here I agree completely with Glenn Ford and his colleagues at the Black Agenda report that Obama in no way represents a retreat from the positions of the Bush administration, of even Reagan, but in fact an acceleration of that. This is nothing short of a counter-revolution. The very well-known journalist Seymour Hersh, if you don't know who he is, he became very famous for his reporting from Vietnam. He was one of those embedded people who talked about what was going on on the ground in Vietnam. Said a couple of months ago, writing from the Middle East, that the White House had been taken over by the Pentagon. And I completely agree with him. He should have also mentioned the State Department has been taken over. Now, this goes along with the observation a few years ago by an economist, Simon Johnson, who insisted that the White House had been taken over by Wall Street, and that this connection between Wall Street and the White House was unbreakable. To understand White House policy, you had to understand the influence and the control of Wall Street. And they targeted especially Goldman Sachs as the dominant player. One could even add the dominant player in Italy, in the unelected government, in Greece, in the unelected government. All of these people have connections to and come out of Goldman Sachs. But this crisis and this repression and this drive towards war as Glenn Ford has suggested, is linked to finance capital. This parasitic growth upon the economy and upon the nation. I just want to emphasize this and underline this. Wall Street are not just thieves, as they call them, banksters, you know, bankers and gangsters, but they are parasites. And this $700 trillion to $1,000 trillion in derivatives that are floating all around the world is evidence of a parasitic class that stands atop the largest economy in the world and is protected by the largest war machine ever in history.
It's Temple's job to prove to you that it is worthy of operating in your house. It's not the other way around. They have not learned their lesson. So much more education is in order, and that's what you've been doing today, and they best pay more attention. The first thing that they're going to have to learn is that when you're living in somebody else's house, you can't treat the rest of the occupants like they are squatters, which is what Temple University does to the people of North Philadelphia. Temple University is an active agent of gentrification. Gentrification doesn't just kind of happen like the weather. People put it in motion and they cultivate it, and that's what Temple does. That's also what Columbia University does in New York. It's what the University of Chicago does. It's what all these other citadels of business that claim to be dedicated to a higher purpose do in the cities in which they're ensconced. That they behave as if they are the only things of value and that you are just temporary sojourners who should be packing up to move someplace else so that property values can continue to rise. You're just here as visitors even though you predated them. You're here today to disabuse Temple University and those people in those windows up there, to tell them that they are going to have to learn to live with the neighbors they've got, not the ones that they are intent on moving in after you're gone. Gentrification, as you know, is war, and the people of North Philadelphia will not tolerate any further aggressions from Temple University or all those banks and such that they're allied with. And that also goes for Temple University's friends in city government, who have always used the police as an instrument of terror, and now also deploy the police to facilitate the social crime of gentrification. That's their new specialization on a very old tool. Temple University is complicit in this terror tactic and will be held accountable. And that's why they don't talk to you. The civilized people of North Philadelphia will not tolerate this kind of behavior in their house because they are confident and aware that they are in possession of this house and they're not going to give it up. They will also not be abused as lowly servants of the university and allow themselves to be treated as if they're lucky to have any kind of job at all on this campus. If there is no living wage and there are no secure conditions of work for Temple's employees, then life is going to have to get a lot more complicated for those people right up there in those windows. Because the people of Philadelphia are labor, and labor is the people. And if labor is not secure and respected at Temple, then Temple will find its position insecure in Philadelphia, as it should be. Temple University's transgressions against its students, especially its students of color, are so grave, so serious as to call the university's entire mission into question. This is not an aberration. It goes to the heart of why they are here, what they intend to do while they're here. If this is a place of higher learning, then what does it teach? Does it by deed and by example teach supremacy of race and supremacy of class? Is that the real curriculum here at Temple University? Of course it is. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here today. Temple also teaches that treachery and duplicity are character traits that should be cultivated and admired. The university's behavior over the past year regarding the African American Studies Department has been totally dishonest and totally dishonorable, a deplorable example of both racist and cutthroat capitalist behavior. The university pretended with a straight face to have reconsidered and rethought its assault on the autonomy of the African American Studies Department. And then, in the blink of an eye, it terminates the contract of the person at the center of the defense of that department, Dr. Tony Monteiro.
All people, no matter what your station is, who knew something about injustice, we would just ask them to join us based upon a simple principle. No dean, no chairman of a department, no president of a university, no matter what the bylaws or the charter of the university say, has a right to do wrong. You don't have a right to do wrong. Yeah. To whom much is given, much is required. You don't have this power to use it any way you want to. And when you think you do, that is when the people have every right to rise up and demand a change in the power. And that's what the slogan, all power to the people, means. When Glenn Ford and other people said all power to the people, when the students say all power to the students, all power to the people, what they're saying is we are challenging unjust power, bureaucratic power, arrogant power. And when we unite with the community, we are saying that a coalition of the people cannot be stopped. The people united has never been defeated. That's a lesson that we've learned from history. A people united has never been defeated. It's only when the people are disunited that we are defeated. The unity that we are building here cannot be stopped. You know, about a month ago, we met with the president and the chairman of the board of trustees, not because they agreed to a meeting with us, but because there was a sit-in, a show of people's power. And they did the right thing. They met with us. They listened to us. We stated our case. We called for my reinstatement, and we asked that Dean Sufis be removed. Not as an act of retaliation or revenge, but we said that Dean Sufis was plagued by a misperception of Temple University, by a lack of knowledge of the environment that she came into by which we mean Philadelphia and North Philadelphia in particular. In fact, she said it to me, to a question that I put to her at the first meeting that our department had with Dean Soufis. And I asked her very simply and politely, how do you see the relationship of our department, the Department of African American Studies, to the black community? And she replied, as they say, with the quickness, I don't see a black community. And of course, you know, I studied Du Bois, and the first thing that came to my mind was the Philadelphia Negro, a social study, the first real urban sociology done in the United States. Could you have been so unaware of where you were coming that you can make such a statement? So there was a lack of knowledge from the beginning, but then there was an unwillingness to learn, to listen, to engage. But finally, Dean Soufis suffers, and she's not alone in this, from a wrong racial philosophy. Now, this is not a small thing in America. Race, as Du Bois taught us, is the problem of the 20th century, of the 21st century, and has been the problem of America since the beginning. If you're wrong on race, what can you be right on? And so Dean Soufis has a wrong racial philosophy, a lack of knowledge, an unwillingness to listen and learn, and a deep misperception. So we called for her to be removed. A troubled tenure, troubled, an authoritarian style, bullying. I know of at least 5 African American men who have been forced out of Temple by Dean Soufis's style of leadership. Now, you talk to people in the administration, they all have a different story and narrative about this. This one left because of this, and you don't know everything about why that one went. But the fact of the matter is, if 5 African American men professors are driven out of a university, whether or not each of them has a different story about why they were forced out, you have to look at that person in leadership. There's a problem of leadership in the College of Liberal Arts. Now, the College of Liberal Arts, I'm going to go quickly. Without a College of Liberal Arts, you do not have a university. What we do in liberal arts is to teach people to think, to teach the human arts, how to be a human being. In fact, if we do our jobs properly, we teach people how to love, we teach compassion. You cannot have a leadership of a College of Liberal Arts that lacks compassion and think you can carry out the mission of African American Studies, which is to teach compassion. Finally, let me say this. 50 years ago, in 1964, a Southern president named Lyndon Johnson signed the Comprehensive Civil Rights Act. For the first time in the history of the nation, really, allowing African Americans the possibility of being citizens of this country, which they contributed so much to building. Lyndon B. Johnson transcended his comfort zone. He did what few thought he would do. 50 years later, we're calling upon President Theobald to do the moral equivalent of what Lyndon Johnson did in 1964. Transcend your comfort zone. Come out of that comfortable administrative protective place called the presidency of Temple and do the right thing. And in doing the right thing, Philadelphia will look upon you with compassion, with respect. Stay up there and don't meet with the students. Allow my firing to stand. And I can tell you, President Theobald, in fact, I can guarantee it, you will be held in utter contempt by your neighbors in North Philadelphia.
Supers must go! Supers must go!
And also, yes, my brother, in the firing of Dean Sufish, yes. Yes, we're asking for her firing, yes. Yes. I want to introduce now Brother Curtis, Representative Brother Curtis Thomas. State Representative Curtis Thomas.
Thank you. I'm excited to see so many people here today. I'm glad for the narrative. I'm glad everybody is clear about the narrative. I have been knowing Dr. Monteiro for more than the last 20 years. I know he says it might be 30. But one thing I do know is that he has been a part of this community. Not just as a resident, but a working activist in this community. There's not too many issues that have impacted North Philadelphia that we have not witnessed the activism by Dr. Monteiro. I am here today because I continue to ask Temple University to share with me why was his contract not renewed. I have not seen any negative evaluations about the 12 years that he has been at this university. I have not seen any conduct on the part of Dr. Monteiro as a resident of this community, as a professor, and as someone who works directly with his students. I've never seen any conduct that would give rise to even bringing in the question of why his contract has not been renewed. And in the absence of any facts, and I know that there are none, his contract must be renewed. Must be renewed. The university must understand that diversity is not our weakness, it is our strength. It is our strength. Having a member of the university faculty as Dr. Monteiro is a plus. It is not a negative. And we promote this concept of neighbor to neighbor. When you have a jewel that is not just academically ready, but somebody that's a part of the community. Temple can shine across the world by having somebody like Dr. Monteiro as a part of their professional staff. You're not losing anything, you're gaining everything. And so the issue of why he should not be renewed is tantamount to being non-negotiable. The question is get it done now.
Dr. Sandra Joy is also one of our alumni of Temple. She's also one of the first to sign a national call of academics and scholars. Dr. Sandra Joy from the University of Rowan, Rowan University.
Thank you, Patrice. That's right, I'm a sociology professor at Rowan University, and I stand in solidarity today with my colleague in academia, my comrade in the movement and my friend, Tony Monteiro. It's a great privilege to stand here on your behalf and amongst all these wonderful people. It's truly an honor to be here. I was with Tony when he found this out. If you remember, Tony, we were at a Mamiya demonstration in front of the Fox station, and he said, "Do you mind giving me a ride up to Temple real quick? I just need to pick up my new contract." So I sat outside in front of Glenfelter, and something told me when I looked in my rearview mirror and I saw his face when he was walking out of Glenfelter, it was not good news. And when he sat in the car and we read the letter together, I knew that it was going to be on, and I envisioned these sorts of gatherings, so I'm very proud to be part of it today. I'm very proud to be among a lot of friends here I see, a lot of comrades in the movement who, we all know the meaning of freedom, don't we? We freed Lynn Stewart. We got Russell Schultz out of solitary confinement. We are bringing Mamiya home. We're going to bring the Move 9 home, Leonard Peltier, and all political prisoners. But I'd like to say a few words today about the meaning of academic freedom, if I could. The concept of academic freedom is based on the idea that the free exchange of ideas on campus is essential to a good education. Academic freedom ensures that colleges and universities are safe havens for inquiry, places where students and scholars can challenge the conventional wisdom of any field, be it art, science, politics, Africana studies, or any others. Institutions of higher education are conducted for the common good, and the common good depends upon the free search for truth and its free exposition. Academic freedom must be protected to encourage free inquiry, promote the expansion of knowledge, and create an environment in which learning and research can flourish, thereby enhancing the quality of higher education and benefiting society. But increasingly, in recent decades, academic freedom is under attack. College and university administrations adopt a corporate model of governance, hire more and more faculty off the tenure track. These contingent appointments now equal about 2/3 of the total faculty appointments in the United States, with part-time positions equaling half. With over 70% of the academic workforce working without protections of tenure and its process, contingent faculty, those who are off the tenure track, have no meaningful job security, and as a result, find their voice limited in terms of what they can say in the classroom, in their research, and about their institutions. Another concept that's important for us to talk about today is shared governance. Shared governance is the set of practices under which college faculty and some staff members participate in significant decisions about the operation of their institutions. Shared governance is democracy in action, intended to ensure that academic decisions are made for strictly academic, not political, commercial or bureaucratic reasons. Without shared governance, academic freedom is in danger because academic freedom is a professional right that makes sense only in the context of a self-governing faculty.
On the move. This is a great day for me today. I know I had a brand new grandbaby born, 3 o'clock in the morning. 3 o'clock this morning, so that's my first announcement. Another warrior coming to the forefront. Come back, come back. I'm just so excited about this grandbaby and then being here for Dr. Tony Monteiro again on this front line. Dr. Tony Monteiro's classes, his Du Bois Conference is for us, for each and every last one of us. And it always had been. And he, like Mamiya, give voice to the voiceless. He's a true educator. I don't know how many people here know about the bombing of my family, 11 men, women, and children. A lot of you don't know, or you don't know about the Rizzo administration attack on our home in '78. A lot of you don't know about the case of Mumia Abu-Jamal. Dr. Tony Monteiro has been the one who keeps it going at Temple, consistently letting people know who did not know that this government dropped a bomb, killing 11 men, women, and children.
But, you know, I'm not trying to pay all that money, but he was doing these series of classes, lectures on Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, and I learned a great deal about this brother through this brother, and I grew in a new appreciation for him. So at his behest, I'm going to give you a little something from the souls of black folk. After the Egyptian, the Indian, the Greek, the Roman, the Teuton, and the Mongolian, the Negro was a sort of seventh son. Born with a veil and gifted with second sight,
in this American world. A world which yields him no true self-consciousness, but only lets him see himself through the revelation of the other world. It's a peculiar sensation. This double consciousness, this sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on him in amused contempt and pity. One never feels this two-ness. An American, a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder. That's right. Right. The history of the American Negro is the history of this strife, this longing to attain self-consciousness, manhood, to emerge his double self into a better and truer self.
All of you for coming out here today. I'd like to thank the coalition, Patrice and Paul, the students, the community, those from the labor movement, that's right, those from the religious community, from the philanthropic community. I bring you greetings, first of all, from Professor Tukufu Zuberi, formerly chairman of the Department of Sociology, formerly chairman of the Department of Africana Studies at the University of Pennsylvania. Professor Zuberi asks that I bring you his warmest solidarity from Bogota, Colombia. I'd also like to bring you words of solidarity and greetings from Corey Robinson, President of Labor's District Council 332, who, because of his involvement in labor negotiations, is unable to be here today. But he wanted me to tell you that Laborers Local 332 is behind our movement. The Board of Regents, that is the statewide Board of Trustees of the California University system, under the direction of then Governor of the state, Ronald Reagan, said that Angela Davis's political philosophy and activism were the reason for her firing. In a speech a couple days later, before 1,300 of her colleagues and students and community people, she presented her vision of higher education. In short, Professor Davis stated that higher education is about humanizing people. That's right. It is about democracy. It is about engagement, and it is about the ethical and moral imperative to act against injustice. Because Professor Davis stood up 45 years ago, UCLA and the universities of this nation are better. Today, we stand upon her shoulders and the shoulders of all of those who fought for a democratic, humane, and just university. We owe Professor Angela Davis a great debt of gratitude. I am certain that Professor Robin Kelly, who is currently the chairman of the Department of African American Studies at UCLA, would say that were it not for the bravery of Professor Davis, there would not be the type of African American Studies department that we have today at UCLA. And if you don't have African American Studies,
very, very few African Americans would have PhDs today. So thank you, Professor Angela Davis. Shame upon President Ronald Reagan. In 1969, the movement for African American Studies, which is now approaching its 50th year, was only beginning. In 2014, in light of all that is happening across this country, in light of my firing, my retaliatory and revenge firing, and now we know, not just at the hands of Dean Teresa Soufis, but in collaboration with a man whom I fought for, stood up for, Dr. Molefe Asante. Let me tell you something. I didn't want to go here. I wanted to be clear-cut. I wanted it to be the white administration against the black professor. But life is never like that. No, it's not. No, it's not. It is always the fight for principle. And so today, we are compelled to say, Dr. Asante, shame on you. Shame! But then we ask, what is black studies? And what is its relationship to the liberal arts, to the black community, and to the moral and ethical education of the young generation? There is a cynical view that African American studies should only exist if its courses are quote unquote popular. If their courses bring in enough students to justify its existence. It is my opinion that righteousness is its own justification. Justice is its own justification. The truth is its own justification.
Tell it, brother. Tell it, brother.
Don't hold the truth hostage to whether or not we can give a popular course on corporate culture, so-called popular culture, so-called popular hip-hop. Bring in the football players, bring in the athletes, drive out the students who want to do rigorous investigation. This has been done in other places. You may have heard of what is going on at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, in African and African American studies, so-called independent studies for football players and athletes. And I'm not condemning them, they are victims of an exploitative system. So-called independent studies courses where you didn't have to come. But they were popular courses. But they were not courses that prepared people to seek the truth. That's right. They betrayed what African American studies is all about, what Professor Davis stood up for. But then there's another cynical approach to African American studies that says, well, African Americans have not made any fundamental or foundational contributions to world civilization. That we do not need right now W.E.B. Du Bois in African American studies at Temple. My question to that assertion is, well, when do we need W.E.B. Du Bois? When do we need W.E.B. Du Bois? It's like asking the question, when do we need the truth? If we don't need W.E.B. Du Bois in black studies, we don't need black studies. It's a fraud and a perpetration of a fraud. me just say a couple things about W.E.B. Du Bois.
That's right. Teach, teach.
W.E.B. Du Bois is more than a black thinker. He is that, but he is more. James Baldwin is more than a African-American thinker. He's that, but he's more. Audre Lorde is more than an African-American thinker. She's that, but she's more. Toni Morrison is more than an African-American thinker. They are thinkers who come from the African-American experience and think about humanity and contribute thereby to civilization.
That's right.
These are thinkers that are about changing humanity. Let me move.
Go ahead, teach. Teach. Now,
there's another cynical view. There's a lot of cynicism about African-American studies going around here these days. My firing was a cynical act. It was a cynical act. You know, it was said on the airwaves that the students asked that my contract not be renewed. The students. What students? Then it was said that, well, the faculty asked that your contract not be renewed. What members of the faculty and why? Then it was said, well, Dr. Monteiro, you are one of those people who had a one-year contract, and you need to accept the fact that we're not going to renew it. It's interesting the person that said that includes himself in the white we. We're not going to renew it. You signed a one-year contract. Well, let me tell you this. Most of the time that I've been at Temple, I've had multi-year contracts. The whole one-year contract started about 2 years ago. President Theobald, 2 weeks ago, mandated that 60% of non-tenure track professors be given multi-year contracts because it is understood that these one-year contracts were conditions of abuse and the misuse of power, as is the case with me. The fact of the matter is, we stood up. Some people said it ain't gonna last. This is just gonna be a temporary thing. They ran back to their white masters and told them, don't worry about it, I can handle him. That's what they said. But it was not just that they underestimated me, they underestimated black folk. The same people who underestimate black people are the ones that say we don't need W.E.B. Du Bois right now and want to change the name of the Department of African American Studies.
Africology.
This is a movement. This is a social movement. Social movements are not just gatherings of people, they're places where people learn. You know, we're doing as much to educate the students of Temple University by creating this movement as we do in the classroom.
At the right time for the right brother, justice for Brother Tony Monteiro. I come to each and every one of you this evening in the spirit of a love supreme of John Coltrane. And the love train of Curtis Mayfield when he said, people get ready. And when you love folk, you hate the fact they're being treated unjustly. That's right. When you love folk, you loathe the fact they're being treated unfairly. Why? Because there's a connection between love and justice. I love my brother Tony Monteiro. Right. Yes, yes. But justice is what love looks like in public. That's right. And you have to stand up Yes. Sly Stone said, stand! There's a midget standing tall and the giant beside him about to fall. And we here to straighten our backs up and take a stand for justice, and it does include our dear brother Tony Monteiro. But what we love about him is that justice for him is inseparable for justice for poor people and working people in every corner of the globe. That's the kind of brother he is. He understands that justice for him is for justice for those who have to deal with U.S. drones in Yemen and Somalia and Pakistan. He understands that the new Jim Crow, the prison industrial complex, is a crime against humanity when you have 3 generations of young, poor, black and brown, and our precious vanilla brothers. This is about everybody of every color if you're willing to stand for justice. That's the kind of brother that Tony Monteiro is. This movement is inseparable from the struggle against the massive unemployment in this city and in this country.
That's right. That's right.
And it goes hand in hand with the indecent housing, even when they got money for stadiums and for big architectural edifices. When it comes to those Sly Stone call everyday people, you can't find a penny. Oh yes, that's why they're closing so many public schools in Philadelphia. You got more priorities. You got money when it comes to the corporate elite, but when it comes to everyday people, you can't find a penny. That's what Tony Monteiro is about. Because he comes out of the legacy of W.B. Du Bois, and Du Bois is not some name, some isolated individual on some pedestal. He comes out of a tradition. When Du Bois raised those questions in 1957, what does integrity have to do with wrestling with oppression? Tony Monteiro is a brother of integrity. I didn't say cupidity. I didn't say love of money. We live in the age of the sellout. We understand that. Selling souls for a mess of pottage. This brother refuses to sell out. That's right. Just like Amiri Baraka, he refused to sell out. Like Ella Baker, she refused. Brother Lohima refused to sell out. Brother Malcolm refused to sell out. Marcus Garvey refused to sell out. That's the tradition.
That's right.
And that second question of Du Bois, what does honesty have to do in the face of deception?
That's right.
We live in an age of monstrous mendacity, lies and lies and lies. Who has the courage to attempt to tell the truth?
Yes.
When the condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak, there is no truth. If you don't keep track of the least of these, I come out of the black church tradition. I'm not ashamed of Jesus.
All right. Amen.
That's the kind of Jesus-loving free black man I am.
All right.
And so when you talk about the least of these, when you talk about the elderly and the fatherless and the motherless and the poor and the working people, and yes, our precious gay and lesbian brothers and sisters having to deal with demonization, we talk about their humanity. That's the kind of brother Tony Monteiro is. With all that third question of Du Bois, what does honesty have to do in the face of insult?
Right.
And I want the world to know
All right, brother.
that when you attack Tony Monteiro, you attacking a black man called Cornel West too. Oh yeah. Ain't no doubt about that, brother. And I'm not just by myself. You attacking Angela Davis.
That's right.
You attacking Du Bois. You attacking the memory of Paul Robeson. You attacking the memory of Sinclair Drake. I'm talking about a tradition. This is not just about individuals.
That's right.
We all are tired of folk who loved us and cared for us and provided some service for us to be here. Wouldn't be Afro-American studies if the masses of black people didn't rise up in the face of the death of Martin Luther King Jr. That's right. The only reason why you got black studies today is because of white supremacy. supremacist powers had to give some concessions because they loved Martin so.
Yes, right. Yes.
That we weren't going to allow the system to get away.
Yeah.
That kind of treatment of that kind of brother.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, yes, and we're going to remind everybody in Afro-American studies about that.
That's right.
That's right.
There you go.
I know my dear brother Malefi Asante, we've done many things together. His work has been a historic contribution.
Yes.
In keeping track of the vicious legacy of white supremacy. But even your friends can be wrong.
Yeah.
Even your friends can side with the wrong folk. And it's in the name of integrity and honesty and decency, we bring our critique to bear on anybody, including our dear brother Malefi Asante. Oh yes, but we also understand, I've been teaching in prisons for 37 years. I'm going to run to my course tomorrow night in Rahway. 150 brothers wrestling with Lorraine Hansberry and Tony Morris. Tony Morris. That our acts never exhaust our potential.
That's right.
That our deeds never fully define our humanity. That people can change.
That's right.
If you put pressure on them.
That's right.
If you keep loving and caring, but also recognizing the truth is going to hurt sometimes, and we're not going to put up with lies. So we say to President Theobald, we know you're new in town, but we want you to do the right thing. And when you do the right thing, you're going to treat Tony Monteiro right, but you're also going to treat all of the precious and priceless members of this community with respect. Oh yes. Part of our problem is we got too many well-to-do black people who think they're respected, but if folk are not respected, precious Jamal and Letitia in the back room, they're not respecting you either. Don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted. We either all go in together or we all go down together. That's why we here. That's why we love this brother. And we gonna be here till the end.
When you close your eyes, things seem to be just fine, like they were meant to be. Tell me why when you turn your back, things seem to stay the way you left it. All is well, just fine. Tell me why, when you open your eyes, fine was just a lie. Things you left turn to mess when you turn your back. Somebody left the gate open. Why? Oh, why all the changes? All of the tears and struggles. Somebody tell me why. All of the sleepless nights. Sleep at night. Tell me why. Why all the pain and heartache? Just don't understand why your life was so hard to take. Yeah. Tell me why. Oh, just don't understand how so many things
tomorrow be different. It will only be different if we claim it.
That's right.
Amen. Claim it. Raise your voice.
That's right.
Plant your feet. Shout if you have to. Scream if you have to. I'm not going to say curse if you have to. Whatever. You got to. But sometimes you need to curse.
Why are there so many wolves dressed in white clothing, claiming to be angels? Tell me why, when you open your eyes, friends, were just a lie. Secrets told are now songs. Somebody tell me why. Why all the changes? All of the tears and struggle. All of the tears. All of the sleep. Can't sleep at night. Just the way I left them, just the way I left them. Yeah. I don't understand. I don't understand. Yeah. Tell me why it seems that promises sleep at night. Oh, can we make it right? Will there ever come a day somebody show me the way? Oh, yeah. Somebody show me the way.